Okay, so these are some great exercises to get better at sewing. Sewing leather is a lot different than sewing fabrics, and so when people make the jump into leather, there's always a learning curve. Now, these exercises are designed to make that learning curve lessen, but at the end of the day, the best thing for you is going to be practice. This is just going to help along with that. Okay, so we're going to do a couple different exercises. The first one is learning to sew on the edge. Again, that's not something that people are normally used to. When you're sewing on the edge, you're trying to get as close to as possible, probably around a millimeter, 2 millimeters away from the edge, so we don't have that weird flap up on the edge of the hide when the person's actually wearing the boot. The next exercises is going to be called boxes. We're going to learn how to use the sewing machine as the measurement itself, so there's some guides that we can follow. The third exercise is going to be called double lines, where we just learn how to sew 2 lines of thread right up against each other on a straight line, on a curve, doesn't really matter. And then for the last exercise, we're going to mix all those together, and this is called the sewing sequence, which you see all the time in boot making. It's a very traditional way of making boots and stitching them together. The reason why we choose to use it is because I don't have to cut my thread at all when I'm sewing a piece of hide onto the boot. So we're able to go 3 rows of stitches all at one time without even lifting up our foot. So it's a great way. Okay, so the first exercise, you want to start just right on the edge, and we're going to get just comfortable with the speed first, and we're going to try to get to accurate. Okay. Now a lot of people ask, you know, what's the best distance away from the edge, like what looks the nicest. I always tell people that consistency looks the best, because, you know, if you're waving around a lot, like, that's going to be a distraction to the boot. If you're, you know, 2 millimeters away from the edge constantly, that's going to look a lot better than if you're like super close to the edge, you know, like a millimeter, but you're waving around a little bit too much. Okay. For these exercises, I don't lock the stitch at all. I don't do any of the things that, you know, any of the important things. I'm just trying to get thread on leather. That's really much it. Okay, so we're pretty even away from the edge here, and you can do that for all the edges of your sample or your test piece that you're using. Okay. Next exercise is boxes. Boxes, boxes, boxes. Let me get this thing worked out. Are you going to be difficult? Nope, you're not. Okay, let's go into boxes. So, you're going to start pretty much in the middle of an area. You don't want to be to an edge on this point. And we're just going to sew a line. So you can sew it pretty quick. So all the way down. Snip your ends. Again, we're not locking them right now. Now you can see your sewing machine has a little depression all the way around. You can see that mark from this wheel, right? We're going to use that as our guide. Now you can also use the gear itself, right? So if I sew just enough to be right on the edge, so here, if you look at here, this corner is butted up right against this stitch, and I'm in line with that depression that I made, the mark from the foot actually. And I'm just going to follow that all the way down. I'm actually not even looking at where I'm sewing. I'm looking at where my gear is. Now if you can see that line very well, then go ahead, look at your needle, and you can sew there. But in my experience, I haven't been able to see that line consistently. So I use the actual gear. Okay, and that's our box. Okay, let's jump over to our double lines. Now again, we're just gonna scoot over a little bit. Let's say, well, probably about half an inch, full inch, whatever. And again, I'm just gonna sew all the way down. I'm gonna do this pretty quick. Doesn't matter if it's a straight line. Okay. Now, if we turn it this way and follow this depression line, that's my box. I'm gonna go on the other side of this line. Okay? And I'm just gonna start sewing. I'm gonna try to get as close as I'm comfortably able to do. Also, when I'm doing this, I want to make sure that I'm using a thread that's an opposing color to my test piece. One, it's better for the shot. It shows up a lot nicer. Two, it shows all of your mistakes. Like, it's very difficult to hide sewing mistakes in thread that is an opposing color to the test piece. As you can see, like, oh, I went in a little bit here. You know, my line wasn't completely straight to begin with, and you can all see that. Okay? But that's about what we're looking for double lines. You know, we're really close. We're probably about 1 millimeter away. You can also kind of picture like one thread in between there. Okay? You wouldn't be able to with the size of the needle, but you can lay just a piece of thread in between those lines. Okay? Now, when you do this exercise, do it in straight lines, do it in curved lines, do it on edges, do whatever. It's you just want to be. That is by far the most difficult exercise, but it's going to make your sewing so much better in the future when you jump on to a pair of boots. Okay, so last is just doing everything together. Okay, again, this is called the sewing sequence. So I'm going to start on an edge this time. Love those servo motors, being able to go as slow as you want. And this, so right on the edge. Okay. Drop that. Now I'm gonna do my box. Okay? I haven't lifted the needle out. I haven't cut any thread. I'm just moving right into my box. Okay, made my box, everything's nice and straight. Again, I wasn't looking at where I was sewing, I was looking at where my gear was on this first line. Okay, now we're gonna do our double lines. Okay, I'm gonna go back towards my first line. And I'm just going to sew all the way down. Okay. And that is everything all at once. Okay. Got my first line, go into my third line, into my second line, then I'm done. Okay. This pattern repeats all over the boot. If I take one of these boots right here, right? I'm either doing one of those exercises, a couple of those exercises, or all of them together. You can see on the counter cover, I'm doing the sewing sequence. On the vamp, I'm doing the sewing sequence. I'm sewing on the edge all the way around. I'm following a line, which is pretty much sewing on the edge. I'm doing a box in the back. You know, it just repeats all over the place. If we can make that connection between these exercises and the boot, then you can just practice these small areas, get really good at them, and it will automatically make your boot stitching better. Now, of course, handmade boots are never going to be perfect. When we do handmade boots, I always like to do colors that match the leather, or thread colors that match the leather. The reason why, because it kind of hides all of your mistakes. But in the end, these are gonna be made by hand, and so you just don't want your stitching to be a distraction. I always teach people the 4-foot rule. If it's distracting from 4 feet away, get rid of it, toss it out. Now you can kind of go back and forth on like, oh, maybe I want my boots to not have a distraction from 2 feet away or 3 feet away, 5 feet away, whatever. My rationalization is, as the person's looking down at their foot, that's going to be about, oh yeah, I got that modeling. As the person's looking down at their boot, they're going to notice those mistakes if you allow that to be more than 4 feet. So that's my thought on it. Of course, 4 feet doesn't work for everybody. Gosh, my wife is like 4 foot nothing, so maybe 3 feet.
I am not.
Okay.
I am over 5 foot, excuse me.
Okay, so she's right on the 4 foot line. Okay, cool. That's it for this one. Let me know if we need to show anything from a different angle, or if we just need to use a brighter piece of leather so you can see the threads a little bit better. But let me know. Thank you. That was just a little nugget from our class. I really like doing these classes because I really like seeing the big improvements that people make, the light bulb turning on. I love seeing that, and so we wanted to share a little part of our classes to you guys. We do a pre-recorded class, and then we do an in-person class, and we really try to tailor it to everybody's needs. So stop by, check it out, and yeah, give us a follow as well. Thank you.